Welcome to RealGM Radio. Before we jump in, do me a favor and subscribe to our brand new YouTube channel to catch the podcast when we record live, tune into the best segments, and join the RealGM Radio community. It helps me, it helps you, it's a win-win. Find us on youtube.com/@RealGMRadio. Welcome to RealGM Radio. On today's show, I'll be joined by Jared Dubin to preview every playoff series, and we're going to add a little draft wrinkle to the conversation. All right, Jared Dubin is here. He writes the Last Night in Basketball Substack. He's one of our favorite guests here. We're recording this after the second day of the play-in tournament. So we do know 6 of the 8 playoff series. But Jared, before we jump into our little playoff series draft, you have some news about a new podcast that you're starting.
Yep, it's me and Mo DeKiel. You know Mo from Bleacher Report, his Twitch stream, pregame shows on the NBA app, video coordinator for the Clippers, the Spurs, Australian men's national team. So me and him, 2 dudes talking ball, called Drive and Dish. The first episode is going to come out tomorrow. So it's going to be fun. And what everybody needs is another podcast from 2 dudes talking about basketball. And we're going to add ourselves to that mix.
Well, you guys are 2 of the best. You're a regular on the show. Mo is a regular on the show. And so people, at least listening to this, know exactly who you guys are and how good you are. So April 18th then is when that comes out. So perfect time for the playoffs. We're going to be breaking down each of these series here, maybe even make a little predictions. Maybe we'll sprinkle those in as we go along. But I thought we could format today's show as a draft. We're going to draft each series by which series we want to see most go 7 games. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me.
You're the guest. You have first pick.
I had a really hard time deciding this between the 3 Western Conference series that we already know about. The Eastern Conference series were not really in contention. I'm not particularly interested in seeing any of those go 7 games.
Okay.
But
I have one Eastern Conference one where I'm like, I could see that one go 7 because some crazy stuff could happen. But go ahead, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to go with the Nuggets and the Clippers, I guess. I'll go with number 1. Is that the same one you had, number 1?
I had them number 2, but if I'm being honest, it's only because I had the Warriors number 1 for hashtag content. We could shoehorn them into the front of the episode. It was either them or the Lakers was the way to go. But I think you're right. This is the most fascinating matchup.
Yeah, just tactically, like the Clippers defense and Jokic trying to solve it throughout an entire series. Like, is Jamal Murray going to be healthy and himself? What does the Clippers offense look like? Like, is Kawhi going to stay the guy that he's been for the last, whatever it is, 20 or so games where he looks like it's like, 24, 25-year-old Kawhi Leonard, which do the Nuggets have literally anybody that can stop that? Like, you go back years ago at this point, like trading for Aaron Gordon, that was kind of a, like, can we match up with Kawhi? Can we match up with LeBron? Can we match up with the best big wings in the Western Conference kind of thing? They haven't really had to deal with Kawhi all that much over the years just because he's been hurt every time the Clippers have been in the playoffs. Like, can he stay healthy through an entire series? What does the defense against James Harden look like? There are so many different questions I have about this series from a tactical standpoint that I would love to see it go 7.
So the only reason I knocked it down, honestly, a peg, was because I was worried if this went 7, then Kawhi wouldn't finish it. And that's
reasonable.
Yeah. So I'm like, but this is such a fascinating series for so many different reasons. I'm so glad you brought the Aaron Gordon thing up because it's just been a bad year for him. I mean, I know he's been dealing with the lingering injuries and things like that, but the way Kawhi has been playing over the last stretch of the season and the way that we've kind of seen Aaron Gordon defend this season, I don't think he's got a chance guarding Kawhi at this level. And unless there's some extra, tank of gas in the back of the Aaron Gordon truck, I just don't see it. I actually think this is going to be like a really high-scoring series. I love the Ivica Zubac matchup against Jokic. I mean, he limits Jokic in the way that is only possible to limit Jokic. Like, he's still averaging 28, 10, and 6 in this series over the regular season on 54% shooting. There's no answer for him. So I think he's just going to do his thing.
Like, if you hold him to 6 assists, that's huge.
Right. That's huge. True. That's true.
And it's one of the few teams that can say, you know what? We're not going to send a second guy. We're just going to guard you and do it with the center on Jokic. Like, we're just going to guard you one-on-one with our center, and we'll live with the results. The Clippers are one of the few teams. I don't know that you would say they can get away with it, but they can at least try it and not have to, go haywire and get themselves into rotation all the time. Zubac has been good enough defensively. He's big enough, strong enough. One of the few guys that's strong enough to not get, totally bowled over on every single possession. It's just, there's no answer for that guy, man. Like, even a guy as good, like Zubac is going to get Defensive Player of the Year votes. He's going to wind up on a lot of ballots. It's going to be probably a first team, maybe second team all defense guy. He's been that good this year. And there's still just like, you're still just hoping and praying, obviously, against a guy like Jokic. But that matchup, I agree with you, is a really, really fascinating one.
Yeah, so I had Zubac on my fake third team All NBA ballot. I had him over Harden. I thought he's been the most important Clipper this year. I've loved everything I've seen from him.
They were my first and second guy off of the third team. It's like there was like 18 guys I thought that were like seriously in contention. Like I had Jalen Williams and I think it was Jaren Jackson as my last two guys on.
Yeah. I'm a lot of the same guys. I'm totally in the tank for Zubac. I'm all in. I want the t-shirts. I want everything that the Clippers are handing out I'm totally in the tank for him. What's really cool about this series too is even just like sort of aesthetically watching this, it's going to start in the middle of the floor with these two centers and everything just sort of branches out beyond them, right? So you'll have that Zubac versus Jokic battle when Denver is on offense. And then you're like, okay, well, what else are the Clippers doing? And then the Clippers, they're uniquely set up, I think, to guard Denver. They could throw Chris Dunn at Jamal Murray and kind of have him chase around. You're right that they're probably, the way that they've played Jokic this season is they kind of just let Zubac stand him up and just sort of see what happens and let their perimeter defenders kind of cut off passing lanes and things like that. I wonder if Kawhi has an extra playoff gear here where he might get involved a little bit more on some of these late doubles and start swiping at that ball and just try to make Jokic a little bit more uncomfortable. And I think an underrated part of this series is that it just feels like the Clippers have so many ways to, again, stop is not the right word when you're talking about Jokic, but at least credibly guard everything that Denver does. And they also have a coaching advantage. Ty Lue, like Michael Malone's not there anymore. This is Adelman's first rodeo as the head coach. I know he's been on that staff for a really long time, and he's really well respected around the league. But Ty Lue, I mean, he's going to be on Coach of the Year ballots. He's done an awesome job with the Clippers, and we know Ty Lue is a playoff tactician. He's going to have adjustments after adjustments, no matter what it is that Jokic throws at him. And I think the coaching part of this could actually end up being a swing factor in this series.
I feel like every time the Clippers have a sort of undermanned roster, I wind up appreciating the coaching job that Ty Lue does more often than when they're healthy. It just seems like he always finds a way to get more out of less. But then when they have all their guys, it's like, well, you didn't get more out of more. And I find myself wanting a little bit. But then every time it's, not the full roster that we thought, it's like, oh, yeah, that's why everybody thinks he's one of the, the top 5 coaches or whatever in the league. So I agree with you that there's probably a coaching advantage on that side. I do think Lue in playoff series, while he does make a ton of adjustments, he sometimes waits a little bit too long to make them. Like I remember a few years ago when it was like the Terrence Mann series against, was it Utah or someone before Utah? And then they waited to play him against Utah. It was like he had a really good series, and then he barely played in games 1 and 2 against Utah. And then he comes in like games 3, 4, 5 and just kicks their ass. Or it was something along those lines, or maybe it was the Utah series and then the next series, one of the two. Right. But yeah, sometimes it can wait a little bit too long. But then once he does it, it's like, oh yeah, let's just hammer that advantage home. So that is something I can see happening. And you mentioned Kawhi. Like there's so many different ways you can use Kawhi defensively. Like obviously Chris Dunn, you want to have him as the primary guy on Jamal Murray. That's basically why he's there. But if he's having trouble, try Kawhi on him. If Zubac is having trouble, Kawhi has guarded big-ass centers before. Like, why not give it a shot? And then you can decide, like, do you want to put him on Michael Porter Jr. and take away all of the threes from him and just make him a non-factor? Do you want to try him on Aaron Gordon? I think, and have him roam a little bit. I think that's a little bit harder this year than it has been in previous years, just because Gordon has shot the ball really well in comparison to previous seasons. But also, like, if a Nuggets possession ends with an Aaron Gordon 3 as opposed to Jokic doing anything or Murray doing anything, or a better shooter like Porter shooting a three, or even Brown, who was, a high 30s to 40s 3-point shooter. Like, I think that's kind of an ideal result. So there are a bunch of different ways you can go with Kawhi. You can switch, obviously, any action involving him if you put him on Murray or Jokic or one end of that two-man game. Like, there are just so many different ways. The thing I'm interested in on the other end, like Christian
One
Brown.
more thing on Kawhi. Sorry, one more thing on Kawhi
ahead.
there, because the Murray thing I think is a great call out, because Chris Dunn's an awesome defender, but Jamal Murray, when he's really going and he starts getting into the physical part of his game where he's starting to use his shoulders and getting into the paint and stuff, I do wonder if Chris Dunn is having a hard time with that. That's where Kawhi can come in and just be like, "You're okay, enough with that. You're not going to do that anymore." So there's the potential for Kawhi to put out fires anytime that Jokic just kind of if Jokic has that lob going to Aaron Gordon, put Kawhi on Aaron Gordon. He's going to erase that lob. If Michael Porter Jr., to your point, is made 3 out of 5 3-pointers in the first quarter and a half, all right, we're going to put Kawhi on Michael Porter Jr. That's gone. You're not going to get that anymore. So, yeah, I think Kawhi is just a fascinating player in this series.
Yeah, I liken it to sort of the way you frame that. It's like a fire extinguisher.
Mm-hmm.
That was something that I brought up going back to the Bucks Suns finals series. That was the way that Milwaukee used Drew Holiday. Like, the first couple games they had him on Devin Booker, and Booker did nothing. But Chris Paul absolutely tore them apart in pick and rolls and then drop coverage. Starting with the end of game 2 into game 3, the Bucks switched Drew onto Chris Paul. Chris Paul did nothing in games 3, 4, and 5. Toward the end of game 5, they switched him back. And it was sort of like, again, it's like a fire extinguisher. You can use Kawhi the same way. On the other end, I'm very interested to see how Christian Brown fares guarding James Harden, because that has to be the matchup. Like, because obviously Gordon's going to be on Kawhi. Porter can't guard guards. You don't want to tax Jamal with guarding James Harden. I would imagine he's going to be on Chris Dunn. So Christian Brown is probably the biggest swing player in the entire series.
Yeah, and I think
probably guard him too, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. I was going to say they'll probably just have that be the matchup on both ends of the floor. And Christian Brown's been really nice as a wing defender for them. James Harden's just a different animal. But then again, it's James Harden in the playoffs. I don't know, but he can get Christian Brown into foul trouble. That's still there. And if that's a thing, Denver's young players, like the bench guys, that's something I'm really interested in watching here. Like, we've seen Adelman go Jalen Pickett over Russell Westbrook. How much longer is he going to do that? Is he going to trust Pickett at the end of these games over Russell Westbrook, or is he going to trust somebody who's been there, as coaches tend to do? I think that could be problematic if they go with Westbrook at the end of these games. As we've seen, the spacing could just become an issue, and Westbrook isn't always the best decision maker at the end of these games, which is putting it nicely. But you go Pickett, and then if Gordon can't guard Kawhi, do they try Peyton Watson? And he might need to have a huge series for Denver. Peyton Watson specifically, he might have to have a huge series for Denver to win this, and then probably one of Pickett or Strother has to just get going, specifically from kind of 3-point range.
Yeah, and if you're going to try Peyton Watson, like, can he stay on the court offensively? Because that's obviously a big swing on the other end. You brought up Harden getting Brown into foul trouble. Like, that's another big thing here too. The Clippers obviously get to the line a lot. The Nuggets basically don't foul. They were, I don't remember the exact, I didn't write down the exact number of where they rank opponent free throw rate, but they don't send opponents to the line a lot. So that's another big thing. And then on the other end, like, the Clippers give up a lot of threes, but the Nuggets don't take them. So how does that sort of interact?
This is the worst thing I think that Denver could have gotten in the first round. This was the worst matchup.
Well, Minnesota was probably worse. Just
Minnesota's fair.
Yeah,
I forgot about them because they were kind of in the
play. And that was the situation they were in. Like, if the Clippers won, they were getting the Clippers, and if the Warriors won that last game, they were getting the Wolves. So I think I'd rather have the Clippers for them. Just, they've played really well against them, obviously, over the years. And it's not Minnesota with all the size and length. Like, it's a little bit of a different matchup. I think I'd probably prefer the Clippers, even if it doesn't seem like a great matchup, especially given how Kawhi is playing.
Yeah, but we have the history between the two teams. Remember the 3-1 series and the comeback and the bubble and all that stuff. But remember, like, the Clippers were still up 3-1 in that series. Everybody remembers the second part of that series.
I mean, I'm thinking the time since then, though, like in the regular season matchups between the two teams since then, Denver's kind of owned that matchup. Although I think it was 2-2.
It's 2-2 this season. Yeah. This is, I don't know. The only way Denver wins, I think all the matchups kind of line up for the Clippers. And then you just get back to the the Jokic point of it
Right.
all.
The Nuggets
And
have the best player in the series.
by far. And as much as we say, oh, Zubac can kind of guard him one-on-one, all this stuff, he can't. He could do it better than a lot of players, but he can't. And that's sort of where I in terms of trying to make a prediction for this series, that was sort of my sticking point is, you kind of go through the, you take your notes and you're like, well, the Clippers have the advantage here, and then they have it here. And then you kind of come out of the dark room and you're like, okay, I feel really good about the Clippers. Oh, wait, I forgot about that Jokic guy. And then you kind of go back to the drawing board and you're like, what are we going to do with this again? So it could be really tough. And then I think the coaching thing could probably help the Clippers, but I just, it's a little bit of an X factor. And you've got Jokic talking about being a beast and all this stuff and whatever. Like, what does this all mean? I don't know. Do you have a pick for this series?
I didn't write them down. I think, like, sort of talking it through, I come out sort of the same side that you do, where I like a bunch of the matchups for the Clippers, and I feel like they might even have the better team, but I can't bring myself to pick against Jokic
Right.
in a series when he's going to be, like, so clearly the best player and the most sort of unstoppable force in the series. And that sort of has me leaning towards, like, Denver in 7.
I have Denver in 7. Home court is going to matter in this also. And it's important that they got that 4th seed and ended up with home court in the first round. I've got Denver in 7, and I feel terrible about it. But I have a rule that I never trust the Clippers. That's my rule. I don't trust them, and I'm not picking them.
A lot more, certainly.
Right, exactly. And I'm going to feel like an idiot if we get to game 3 and we're looking at the injury report and it's Kawhi hamstring questionable, and I'm just like, of course, because the guy hasn't finished a playoff series in forever. And then you've got, okay, if he's out, then we're looking at James Harden, and we know what his playoff resume is. So I'm going Denver in 7, and I hate it. I hate the pick, but this was the hardest one. But it'll be a blast if it goes to 7 games, because then we just have, when you kind of think about what it means for a series to go 7 games, that just means we've got Jokic solving this puzzle over and over and over again. No matter what Kawhi or Ty Lue or Zubac or any of these guys throw at him, it'll just be him solving this puzzle and then potentially winning a game on his home court to advance. So great pick. I have no issues with it. My next pick, I'm going to go Golden State, Houston. And I'm picking this because I think the matchup is really interesting. I also just love the drama around it. I love the accoutrements. I love you remember last year when Houston ended the season on an 11-game win streak, trying to push Golden State out of the play-in tournament, and you've got like Tari Eason recording videos and trash talking. These teams, I don't think very much like each other. And more importantly, I don't think Golden State respects Houston. And there's like a little brother, big brother thing with these organizations. We remember obviously with James Harden in Houston and all those playoff series from the dynasty days, a very different Rockets team, but you always feel like some of that kind of stuff, just the laundry is the same. So you kind of feel like, all right, it's still sort of lingering there a little bit. So you've got all of that. And then you get into the matchups of it all. And I think this is fascinating from an X's and O's standpoint, from a last roar of the Golden State Warriors, the veterans, versus this up-and-coming Houston Rockets team that's the 2 seed in the Western Conference, and nobody's taking them seriously. So I love the intrigue around this series.
Yeah, I think that the big brother, little brother thing, even though it's just laundry thing, sort of sticks in my head too. Like, so much of the talk around like the Knicks Pacers series last year was just about the 1990s. It's like some of these guys weren't even born for those series, and we're still talking about that. When it comes to this, like, so many guys in the Rockets were not even in the NBA for all of those Warriors Rockets series going back to 2017, 18, 19, whatever it was. And most of the important guys on the team, on that Rockets team, were drafted after that. My dog is like trying to dig through something over there right now. It's being sorry, I keep looking up over there. But yeah, I mean the stylistic contrast between the two teams too. Like, the Rockets are going to smother you with their athleticism and their length and whatnot, and the Warriors are just going to try to be smarter than you and dice you to death with a million high IQ plays. And just the contrast between those two styles of play is going to be really fascinating. Obviously, like you said, it's like the last gasp of this veteran Warriors team against the number 2 seed that is one of the youngest teams in the league that people are. I don't know that they're not taking them seriously, but they aren't treating them like a typical number 2 seed. I think is probably more accurate to say. And the way I'm thinking about the series, maybe I'm not treating them like a typical number 2 seed either. Now that I think about it,
Well, they really aren't. And the Warriors aren't a typical 7 seed either. There's only 4 games that separate these teams in the standings. So it's not as if they're like this Rockets team was some sort of juggernaut and the Warriors are this also ran that just barely backed into the playoffs. I mean, these are 2 good teams. These are 2 good teams. And I think with the Warriors, they have the 2 best players in the series. As long as Jimmy Butler performs the way that he did in the play-in tournament against Memphis, and frankly, not the way he played in the last regular season meeting against Houston when he only took 7 shots. If Jimmy Butler is playoff Jimmy, then Golden State has the 2 best players in this series. But then what's really interesting is then you get after that, Houston has 5 of the next 6 best players on their roster. So it's kind of interesting in that star power usually wins, but at some point that has to not apply if your 1 through 8 is just so much deeper than the opposing 1 through 8. And you look at Golden State and it just feels like their biggest swing factors, like the biggest bellwethers for the Warriors this season has been, Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, these guys are great. But they go on win streaks when Buddy Hield is making a bunch of shots, when Pods is making a bunch of shots. And they need those guys to make shots. And if those guys aren't, then all of a sudden this Warriors depth gets really flimsy. And then you've got the whole Jonathan Kuminga question in this too. Is he going to play? It kind of feels like this would be the series where he does play, but Steve Kerr has basically decided, I don't trust this guy.
Yeah, I think Pods has been good enough and trustworthy enough for a while now that I'm not necessarily worried about him hitting shots. I do think it would be an interesting series to use Kuminga, but they're also getting similar stuff from Gary Payton II. Mm-hmm. And Steve Kerr, obviously, at this point, just trusts him more. And Payton was awesome in that play-in game. And he's obviously been there for a while and been trustworthy for a while. So I, to a certain extent, understand why he might have Kerr's trust. I would still be playing Kuminga. Like, there's plenty of opportunity to put him out there. You brought up the idea that, Golden State is the 2 best players in the series, and Houston might have, 6 of the next 7 or whatever it is. Like, depending on which version of Draymond you get, they could have the 3 best players in the series. Like, that is entirely possible. Yep. Like, if he comes out there and it's just hounding Şengün, and Şengün is doing nothing because he can't deal with Draymond Green, and that's not outside the realm of possibility at all, like, as good as that dude is. Like, and at that point, it's just like, okay, what chance does Houston have at that point? Like, if Şengün isn't dominating the series inside, I feel like it's very difficult for Houston to have enough offensively to come out of this series winning. Like, he needs to be like the second best player in the series or the first best player in the series. He can't be the third or fourth best player in the series and Houston come away with a win, I don't think.
And, obviously with Draymond on offense, when he's facilitating up high and he's doing his thing with Steph in the 2-man game, you're forcing Şengün then to defend in space a little bit, unless Houston tries to flip those matchups. But they're not going to be able to do that every single time, especially if this game is a little up-tempo and Şengün's just matched up on Draymond in transition and stuff. Like, it's going to be tough. And I think most people would have Şengün as the best Rockets player. And they're probably, I think they're right largely on balance, but if Draymond is able to play off the court Houston's best player, then all of a sudden, if you're the Rockets, you're kind of looking at, all right, I guess we're just going to try to win this with depth. But, Amen Thompson's going to have something to say potentially in this series. And I wonder if are we looking at a point here where, again, I think most people look at the Rockets and say Şengün's their best player. I wonder if by the end of this series, we're looking at it and just being like, no, Amen Thompson's definitely their best player.
I would not put that past him at all. I think we might already be there. Amen Thompson is my favorite player in the league to watch right now. Yep. Just the way he moves around the court is so different than the way anybody else moves. Just the combination of speed and athleticism and instinct and reaction time is just, it's so rare. And, we saw what he did to Steph in that last game of the regular season, which was between Unreal. Him and Brooks. Like, the way that those 2 guys can guard is pretty unbelievable. I am interested to see, like, we've seen the Warriors a couple times in the last few games, like, guard the opposing center with Jimmy and have Draymond guard somebody else. Like, could we see Jimmy on Şengün and Draymond sort of roaming away from Amen Thompson and being like, okay, you want to take 20-footers or threes or try to make cuts while I'm not paying attention, which is never, then, see what you could do. I'm interested in how that dance sort of works too. But man, like between the defense that Amen's going to bring and getting out in transition at every opportunity, like I love watching that dude so much.
Well, let's go through the matchups here because there's going to be a lot of cross matching and weird stuff happening. So Houston will have Amen guarding Steph, just like they did last time. Steph was 1 for 10 in their last meeting with Amen, and I don't even really include that one shot. It was like a heave from like 38 feet out that he basically just took out of desperation. So Amen basically shut down Steph Curry completely in that game. And Dylan Brooks, you're right to bring him up too and include him. And Fred VanVleet, by the way, who's on the Rockets, has done historically a good job on Steph. He's good at fighting over those screens and keeping up and doing that kind of thing. But they'll have Amen on Steph. Dylan Brooks will be on Jimmy. They'll put they put VanVleet on Draymond in the last game. I thought that was kind of interesting. And then they'll have Jalen Green guard Pods. And then they had Şengün kind of playing off of Moses Moody to start these games. So I think they'll probably stick with that just because it worked so well. But then on the other end, you've got the Warriors. They'll have Steph guard Dylan Brooks. They'll have Pods guard Fred VanVleet. Moody on Jalen Green, who's kind of become just their wing stopper guy. And he's been very good. They had Jimmy Butler on Amen Thompson and Draymond Green on Şengün last time, but they will flip those a lot. And depending on what the lineups are out there. So that'll be what I think both teams want to get to. When I look at the formula for Houston to win, I think you already hit it. They've got to dominate points in the paint. They have to do it. And they've got to take away the threes. They can't let Hield or Pods or one of those guys get hot. But if they're dominating in the paint, and Memphis, by the way, did do a really good job in the paint in that play-in game. The problem was that they just didn't have anybody to guard Jimmy Butler, and he went off. And I think the difference between Memphis, who's really big, and I think gave Golden State problems with their size, and Houston, who's really big and will give Golden State problems with their size, is Houston has guys who can guard Jimmy Butler, and Memphis didn't. Like Memphis finally went with Desmond Bane towards the end there, but it was too little too late by then. But Houston, they'll be able to start games with Dylan Brooks on them. Then they can get into Tari Eason. They can use Amen Thompson when they want to. They've got a lot of different guys who can guard him. And then they could do that thing too where they have Şengün and Steven Adams on the court at the same time with even a Jabari Smith Jr. And then all of a sudden they're kind of like soaking up all that space that Jimmy Butler likes to get into and kind of get into those like leaning push shots and start drawing fouls and stuff like that. So Jimmy could probably try to get those guys into foul trouble. And those guys are definitely foul prone, but they're going to start eating up some of that space that Jimmy likes to get into, and they could potentially make things uncomfortable for him. So if you make Jimmy Butler uncomfortable and you've got Amen Thompson draped all over Steph Curry and making his life a living hell, then all of a sudden you're starting to get into a formula where this looks really good for Houston.
Yeah, I would say that I don't know that I'm confident they'll be able to find answers defensively, but they have so many different options that there are going to be ways for them to figure things out for stretches of each game or even for entire games. Like there's just so many different ways that they could go and so many different looks that they can present on that end of the court, whether it's to Steph or to Jimmy or even to Draymond, that it leaves me just thinking like the entire key to the series is like, can Houston score at all efficiently in the half court? And then that's just going to be about whether Şengün can be dominant inside and whether guys like VanVleet and Jalen Green and Jabari Smith and Tari Eason and whoever else can make the shots when they get left open on the perimeter. And that's just like the entire series to me might come down to those two factors.
Jalen Green is maybe the biggest X factor in this series. Is he Jalen Green of March, where he looks awesome, or is he Jalen Green from the rest of the season, where sometimes he gets benched at the end of these games? And
2 years in a row, Jalen Green, unbelievable in March. Who could have seen that coming?
Jalen Green and Kobe White are the March Hall of Famers. Like they're the best in this month. If every game were March, they would both be first ballot. I look at Golden State's formula for winning. We already touched on it, but Draymond playing these guys off the floor, Steph breaking free of Amen Thompson. And that's the difference, I think, between one game in April and a 7-game series is, can Thompson really do this for 7 games, for 6 games, for 5 games, like however long this series is going to go? That's where I have a question, because Amen Thompson's never been in the playoffs. And Steph Curry is obviously maybe the best. He's probably the best conditioned athlete in the league when it comes to just running around a lot. So as this series goes on, it could benefit Golden State, but at the same time, if Houston's able to kind of dominate them in the paint, then maybe the Warriors are just kind of limping by the fifth or sixth game, and then it looks a lot better for the Rockets. The other part of this too, and you mentioned some of the veteran stuff, it feels like Houston needs to win these games early. And if these games are really close late, I think that favors Golden State just because I like their decision makers. I like their closers. They obviously have all the experience, and we just still don't know who's closing for Houston.
Yeah, I mean, Golden State can get a little bit iffy with the decision making, especially with the passing.
Totally fair. Yep.
But
they almost gave that game away at the end in Memphis. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, I trust Steph and Jimmy more late in games than I do pretty much anybody on Houston. I think you brought up a good point with Steph and the conditioning. Like, Ahmed is the best athlete in the league right now, but you also just have to be so 100% disciplined at all times, and that's a lot different than just being the best athlete. Like, if you stick with Steph for 94% of a possession and there is less than half a second after he gets off the ball where you sort of let up your stride a little bit, all of a sudden you gave up 3 points. Like, that's just
does he want to be doing this? It's his first playoff series. This guy wants to be a star. He might just get bored of just being the guy who chases Steph Curry around for an entire series, and I don't know that he's that guy.
Like the mentality,
he's got the right mentality, but you never know.
Yeah, you never know. Like, man, there's so much interesting about this series.
I have Houston in 7, and I don't feel good about it.
I have Golden State in 6, and I don't feel good about it.
All right, I think it's one of those two, right? Either the Warriors kind of just set the tone and they're able to win this one, or Houston just sort of wears them down with their size. All right, you have the next pick.
Yeah, I'm going with the other Western Conference series, Lakers Wolves, right? Like the Luka versus Rudy Gobert of it all, the Luka versus Jaden McDaniels of it all. Anthony Edwards is going to have to spend a lot of time guarding LeBron James in this series. He's already been talking about that and how much he's looking forward to it. The matchup between those two guys, like when you have McDaniels and Edwards on LeBron and Luka, like, is there anybody on Minnesota that's going to be able to guard Austin Reeves? Like, are they going to have to play? Are the Wolves going to have to play Nickeil Alexander-Walker for 30 minutes a night because Mike Conley can't be out there defensively? And if they do, what does that do to Minnesota's offense, which tends to lose its organization principles a lot of times without Conley out there? And Conley shot really well from 3 after having that horrendous start to the season. Are they going to miss a guy who shot 40% from 3 for a lot of the year? Like, are you going to have DiVincenzo out there instead because he's a little bit more trustworthy offensively than Alexander Walker is? Can he handle the Reeves matchup? Is Julius Randle going to be a completely different guy in the playoffs than he's been for the majority of his career? Who's guarding him for the Lakers? Like, is LeBron going to be on Julius Randle? Is LeBron going to be on Rudy Gobert? Like, if they're playing small for a lot of the series because they're trying to space Gobert off the court, I'm fascinated by a lot of what this is going to look like.
Yeah, this is a series of levers and buttons from both coaches because they could both kind of get into different stuff and use different lineups and use different personnel. And it's going to be a matter of when JJ Redick or Chris Finch just want to pull a lever or push a button and then make the other team react, right? Because you're going to have the Lakers are obviously, I mean, I shouldn't say obviously. We've never seen JJ Redick coach a playoff series. I assume he'll start with Jackson Hayes. But Redick could also do the thing and just be like, we're probably going to end up with our lineups with Rui or Dorian Finney-Smith at the 5 anyway, so let's just start that way and throw a curveball into this thing right from the jump. What's really cool is that these teams have not played each other. We know what Luka looks like, generally speaking, against Minnesota. These teams have obviously played together, the Lakers and the Timberwolves. But since the Luka trade, these teams haven't played each other. Luka played the Wolves once in a Lakers jersey, but like nobody on Minnesota was playing in that game. So this is a completely fresh start for this sort of series here. But there is a little bit of obviously history between just the individual players here. Most people are talking about when I see kind of previews of this series, they're like, okay, what's Rudy Gobert's role in this series? I think that might be a little overstated. I think he's going to play. He's fine switching. The problem is when Gobert gets spaced out in 5-out lineups, and he's not even a switch defender. He's just sort of over there somewhere and he's away from the basket. And the Lakers have a couple of different lineups that they can get to where they could force Gobert to be out on Hachimura or DFS and just not by the rim. And that's obviously what LeBron and Luka are going to want. My bigger question is, where do Mike Conley and Julius Randle fit in? And it's kind of what you were talking about before. I don't know if those guys could play in this series, right? Because if you got Ant on LeBron and then McDaniels on Luka, or whatever kind of order you want to put that in, is Mike Conley guarding Austin Reeves? Because that's going to be a problem. And I wonder how soon Finch is just like, we can't do this. And then do they go to we're going to start Donte DiVincenzo, and then when you take DiVincenzo or you take Conley off the floor, then you're forcing Anthony Edwards into that point guard role. And he's awesome. He's clearly not 100% comfortable being a point guard at this stage in his career. And that's where things kind of get a little murky. Because then you've got Ant's questionable decision-making as a point guard versus all-time great decision-making with LeBron and Luka.
Right. We already saw that last year in the series against Dallas, where it was Luka making the right decision against Minnesota's defense every time, and Edwards doing it 60% of the time or whatever it is. And that's just not good enough. Now you put Luka on the same team as LeBron, and you got these guys making the right decision 100% of the time. And you have not just Edwards, but probably Julius Randle doing a lot of the ball handling and decision-making, because you need another guy out there that can create shots for somebody else or can at least organize the offense. And other than Edwards and Conley, who else is doing that on Minnesota? And we've already seen, obviously, what that looks like for Randle in a playoff setting a lot of times, and it's not that good. Now you throw in, him maybe being guarded by LeBron, and how's that going to go? I don't know what this series looks like for Minnesota offensively or defensively. There are so many different areas that I think the Lakers can sort of press advantages against them.
Yeah, and then I don't know what to expect from Ant in this series. I love his competitiveness. I love it. Sometimes it gets into a bravado matchup with him. And if he wants to go toe-to-toe with Luka and LeBron and try to be the best player on the floor, I think that could work against Minnesota a little bit in this series, where they're obviously going to need him late in these games to just start making shots. Like, that's the easiest way to become to kind of vaporize the decision-making issue is I'm just making all the shots and it doesn't matter what decisions I'm making because I'm that good. But I don't know that that's going to work for a playoff series when you're talking about having to solve those problems. And the other part here, too, that I kind of think is interesting is JJ Redick is obviously new as the coach of the Lakers and then was handed this whole other new thing midseason with the Luka trade. So he's kind of become a new coach twice over the course of this season, or just kind of been put in a new situation twice is probably the better way to put that. And I still think he's got a good handle on the lineups and I think and stuff like that, but it's still kind of like experimental. Whereas Minnesota, it feels like they've figured out what they want to do with their lineups. But I almost wonder if Chris Finch is almost like, these are the lineups we want to play. I'm going to stick to them, even if they're not working. Where JJ Redick might just have the benefit of, it's all new, so I'm kind of still just trying stuff out. And that whole monkey wrench kind of curveball thing could end up playing into the Lakers' favor, as I think they're a little bit more versatile than Minnesota is. But I wonder if the Timberwolves will end up going eventually to the lineup of, they haven't played it much, but will they eventually go to McDaniels and Julius Randle in the front court and just take Gobert off the court altogether and just try to space it out and create room for Anthony Edwards to make those decisions and play in space a little bit? Again, they haven't used it much. They've only flirted with it in the regular season, mixed results. Nothing even worth talking about because the sample is so small. But that to me is the interesting part, because the Lakers could force them to go to that.
Yeah, or McDaniels and Naz Reid, either way.
Yep.
You maybe get a little bit more rim protection that way and a little bit more reliable shooting. But obviously then you don't have really any creation beyond Edwards. And that could present some issues. I am interested, though, like, who is going to guard Edwards for the Lakers? You can't have Austin Reeves on him. You don't want to tax Luka with it. Rui, that doesn't seem great either. Like, is LeBron spending this entire series guarding Anthony Edwards? Like, I could see it.
I hope so.
Probably their best option. And then you're going to have those two guys guarding each other the entire series. Like, that's going to be fascinating, too.
That's a great call. I think this is a terrible matchup for Minnesota.
Now that I think about it, if the Lakers do what you said and just start Dorian Finney-Smith,
and that's
they'll
it.
guard Edwards.
Yeah. It might be one of those situations where they also, again, like you start Jackson Hayes potentially with Hachimura, LeBron, Luka, Reeves. You might just start LeBron on Ant and then just get to the Dorian Finney-Smith lineup real quick and then just have DFS on Ant. But then again, if you're Redick and you're going to be doing that, you might as well just start that way.
Right.
I think it's fascinating. And I think JJ Redick is just galaxy brained enough to just do that. But yeah, that's really it. I think this is a really bad matchup for Minnesota.
Yeah.
I like the Lakers a lot in this spot.
It needs to be a monster Gobert series for them to win. Like he has to be getting every single rebound to the point where like the Lakers have to stay big, otherwise they're getting destroyed. And he needs to be able to handle himself in those switches, like you said. Like, is he fine handling himself in most switches? Sure. Is he fine handling himself in switches against Luka and LeBron? No. Right. So that needs to be something where he's 1,000% on point, and those guys are not like freely getting into the paint against him off the dribble or spacing him out to the point where it's like, man, you just can't switch that anymore. He needs to have a monster series, but then it's like Edwards needs to be 100% on point in his decision making. Conley needs to be able to stay on the floor if Edwards isn't 100% on point in his decision making, because they need someone to organize the offense, but that means he's guarding someone that you don't want him to be guarding. Like there are so many different advantages the Lakers can press that it's hard for me to see Minnesota unless it's just like a size and athleticism advantage of, you know, that the bigger front court. And then if they come in with, you know, with DiVincenzo or Alexander Walker in the backcourt, they have, I guess it's technically the more athletic backcourt because Luka and Reeves aren't, you know, elite athletes, but are those guys really going to get smothered by DiVincenzo, Alexander Walker, and Edwards? Like, I don't think so.
Right. But it's the Timberwolves don't have a single option that you feel awesome about guarding Luka or LeBron, but they do have a lot of options. So is it just a matter of throwing everything at these guys?
Right.
But then you end up with the Austin Reeves question. It's like, well,
right.
Now you've got this guy against a potentially weak defender.
McDaniel's like, okay, good luck with Luka. That's going to be your show the entire time. Edwards, good luck with LeBron. That's going to have to be your show the entire time. And then it's like, well, we've got 3 different guys we can try on Austin Reeves.
Yeah. I think Nikola Alexander Walker will be used a little bit on both of these guys, you know, as you kind of get into your rotations. I'll be fascinated to see who Julius Randle guards in this series. Like, do you just try to use his size on Luka and try to take away those drives to the paint? I think it's a little risky, but
LeBron. Do you put him on LeBron?
Same thing with LeBron. Yep. The one thing about Luka too is that since he got traded to the Lakers, his shot from outside has been very hit or miss. And if that 3-pointer is not going down for him, that does make things a little bit easier if you're Minnesota, because then you say, all right, we're going to keep Gobert or somebody in the paint. Naz Reid, when he's in there, we'll keep him in the paint. Maybe we do use Julius Randle on him a little bit and just dare Luka to shoot outside. I'm just trying to think of a way where Minnesota does win this series, and it would be kind of what you were saying. It's just that their size and their length and their athleticism is just smothering and overwhelming, and they're taking away those passing lanes. Gobert is just dominating the boards, and all of a sudden the margin just gets really thin for the Lakers, and it turns into a series where they just have to make outside jumpers. And they've been a good 3-point shooting team this year. I think Rui Hachimura is really nice from the corners and stuff, but I think it's fair to say that they're pretty streaky as a 3-point shooting team. You know, Gabe Vincent, Rui Hachimura, Jared Vanderbilt can't really shoot from outside. Austin Reeves is a knockdown shooter. LeBron somehow is a knockdown shooter now, but you know, maybe that's the world where Minnesota wins. But again, I feel pretty good about the Lakers. I have them in 5, but I'm going to regret that when Anthony Edwards just wins one by himself and this series goes to 6.
Yeah, I was going to say I took him in, or I will take him in 6. I didn't write all this stuff down beforehand. So, yeah, I mean, I think the way that Minnesota takes is like turn the Lakers offense into a shooting contest for Hachimura, Finney-Smith, Gabe Vincent, Austin Reeves, whoever else, and just hope that they don't make them and have that front court sort of dominate the series.
The problem solving on the Lakers is just too good, though. I think that's what you and I kind of agree on. All right. My pick. Eastern Conference.
There's only one way to go here, I think, in the East.
I don't know. Indiana, Milwaukee?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, good. So we're on the same page there. First of all, these teams hate each other.
Yes.
I want this going 7. I thought about this for my first pick just because I think the series is relatively inconsequential, and this might just be the best moment of the Pacers and the Bucks playoffs. So it doesn't really matter if this thing goes 7, regardless of what your rooting interests are. But also, these teams just hate each other. The other part of this too, and it's worth just mentioning right off the top, Damian Lillard is going to be out for Game 1. The Bucks are leaving it open, and I don't know if they really believe it, but all the reporting out of Milwaukee is that they're optimistic that Damian Lillard could return for a playoff series. So I don't really know what that means, but if this series goes 7, obviously you're increasing the likelihood that we do see Damian Lillard in this series, and then obviously it just gets way more interesting if Damian Lillard is Damian Lillard. And so if they don't have Dame, I have a really hard time seeing Milwaukee win this series, but I think the matchups in this, I do think there's like tactical intrigue in this because these teams have seen each other a lot. Milwaukee actually has the season series 3-1. Giannis against Indiana this season is averaging 30, 12, and 8 on 65% field goal. Everything about what the Pacers want to do starts with, what are we going to do with that guy? So they've tried a lot of different things in the past. I think they'll probably just play it straight with Siakam on Giannis. My big question is, what do you do with Miles Turner? And I wonder, so they've had Miles Turner guarding Brook Lopez mostly during the season, but do they maybe have Miles Turner do the thing that a lot of teams against Milwaukee do now, where they plant their center on Kyle Kuzma because they're just not worried about him from the outside and say, all right, Turner, we're going to assign you to Kuzma, but you're really just going to play off, guard the paint. I think they have to try to build that wall in front of Giannis. I think that's the only way to stop that guy.
I think at some point you at least have to try it, especially if Giannis is doing what he always does, which obviously he will. Like the thing is, you talked about the numbers against Indiana, 30, 12, and 6, 65% shoot. Like that's just
30,
what he
12,
did for the regular season. Like that's just him.
Yeah.
So that's always funny. I think the key, obviously, like, is Dame playing? And if he is playing, what is he? Like we saw what it looked like last year when he was playing hampered against the Pacers in the first round, and it was not pretty. Like, is he going to be able to be himself if he does play? And like, I don't know how you're coming back from like a blood clot in 3 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever it is. Like, it seems crazy to me. And then if he isn't playing, how much of what we saw last year with the insane backcourt pressure that Indiana put on in that series, like they're going to do that to, Ryan Rollins and Kevin Porter and whoever else is playing point guard and bringing the ball up the court for the Bucks. And how much does that disrupt Milwaukee's offense? Like, are you going to have Giannis bring the ball up the court because those guys are unable to deal with the pressure? And then if that's happening, how much does that tax him from being able to do everything else that he needs to do? Like, is this going to have to be a real big series for, Gary Trent Jr. and Taurean Prince? Probably. And that's not something I feel great about. Like, if Dame isn't himself, it's hard for me to see how the Bucks win the series apart from Giannis just being like 45, 12, and 8 every single night. Just, you can't deal with him, which obviously you cannot put past him, but it's just, it's really difficult. This Bucks roster, just outside of Giannis, is kind of creaky and slow. And like, part of the idea of Middleton for Kuzma was to alleviate some of that. It doesn't. Like, I think we talked about it after the deadline. The idea of Kyle Kuzma and the actuality of what Kyle Kuzma is on the court are very different. A lot of people view Kyle Kuzma as the guy he was in that Lakers championship run and for part of the next season. And he was basically that guy for about 16 months, and that's about it. And the rest of his career, he's been a different guy. And that's kind of the guy that he's been since he's been in Milwaukee. And I just don't know how much that helps you in this matchup. Is there a hiding place for Tyrese Halliburton? It's much easier to do that if Dame is not playing.
Right.
Because then you could potentially hide him on Rollins or Porter in addition to Prince or Trent or whoever else is out there.
That's the key. That's the key, because with Lillard not out there, and Milwaukee fans will be like, well, Ryan Rollins is shooting 40% from three, and look at some of the games that Kevin Porter Jr. has. It's like,
I don't care.
Nobody cares, right? It's different than shooting that, and then the respect that Damian Lillard gets on the perimeter versus just letting Ryan Rollins shoot. And obviously, he's not the pick and roll guy. He's done a fine job. I don't want to just like start bashing Ryan Rollins on a podcast for
No,
no reason, but he ain't
obviously,
Dame.
like from the Pacers' perspective, if a possession ends with Ryan Rollins shooting,
That's a win.
wonderful.
Right.
If the possession ends with anything other than Giannis doing whatever he wants, or maybe Brook Lopez taking an open three, that's an ideal result.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The other part here is what's Brook Lopez's role in this series? Because if Indiana starts going real up and down and starts pushing the tempo, they could play him off. And Brook Lopez did not have a great series against the Pacers last year. I wonder then what the Bucks do. Is this going to be a big Bobby Portis series? And again,
That worries me too. Like,
right, that's sort of the same as the Ryan
series?
Rollins thing. It's, hey, if this is the Bobby Portis series, then that's a win for us if we're the Pacers.
Right. Or like, does it have to be a Giannis at center series? But
right. So, but if you have Giannis at center, then it's, are we going really small? Is it Kuzma at the 4? Is it Portis at the 4? Like, what is it?
Right. And like, do you even have, like, what is your lineup then? Like, let's say Dame is out. Are you like Rollins or Porter, Trent, Prince, Kuzma, and Giannis? I don't feel terrific about that either. It needs to be a big Brook Lopez series, I think, like you said, especially if Dame is out. He needs to be able to control the paint defensively. He needs to be knocking down his shots. When he gets the right matchups, he needs to be in the post and, dropping those hook shots over people and getting his sort of slow by drives. Yeah, it's the
Giannis factor that I just keep coming back to with Milwaukee. And I wonder, like, again, if you put Turner on Kuzma, do you put Nesmith on, and I would try this. I would put Nesmith on Brook Lopez because Brook Lopez is big. He doesn't score in the paint hardly ever anymore. It's not like a thing that he does anymore. Milwaukee does not score in the paint, even though they have a ton of size. It's just like all their paint points are basically just Giannis. Nobody else really gets in there. If you put Nesmith on Lopez, then you could, again, theoretically switch that Giannis Brook Lopez pick and roll, which I think is going to be their only offense in this series. I don't know if Damian Lillard's not playing. I don't really know what else you're going to go to. You'll obviously try. Could it be a big Kevin Porter Jr. series? Could it be? Those guys aren't going to. They could swing a game. They're not going to swing a series. But if you do that, I just think you're able to build that wall if you're the Pacers, and then if you're able to limit Giannis, because you're right. Even if it's 30, 12, and 8, I don't know how that's enough for Milwaukee. To your point, he almost has to score 40 or 50 a game for the Bucks to even have a chance. So I think it's interesting. The reason I have it ranked up here is because it would be really fun to see it go 7. Because if it did go 7, that means Damian Lillard returned, and now we're starting to answer these questions. Because if Dame's out there, then now you get the Damian Lillard, Brook Lopez pick and roll. That's a whole other weapon that the Pacers have to worry about. You've got Damian Lillard and Giannis pick and roll. That's a whole other thing that the Pacers have to worry about. Yeah. So that would be the fun version of this, but I'm not expecting I don't know how you could go into this and be like, yeah, we're getting 100% that version of Damian Lillard, even if he's on the floor. So I've got Indiana in 6.
There wasn't a lot of Dame Giannis pick and roll even in this matchup when they played during the regular season. Yeah, I think Indiana in 6 sounds pretty good to me too, even though that would then involve the Pacers winning on Milwaukee's home. Like, I don't want to bring myself to pick against Giannis. I can't pick against Giannis in like 5 games, but I also don't think it's going 7 unless Dame plays. I don't think Dame is going to play. And if he does, I don't think he's going to be himself. So it's like, then am I betting on Giannis just scoring 50 points and having 10 assists every night, which I wouldn't put it past him, but also I'm not betting on that. So I feel like I'm just kind of splitting the baby with, okay, Pacers, I think they're going to win the series, but I don't think they're going to win in 5, and I don't think it can go 7. So let's just say it's in 6.
It's kind of where I ended up. 5 felt a little disrespectful, and I wouldn't do that to Giannis ever. But yeah, I think this is the other part of this we didn't even mention. It's I don't know who guards Tyrese Halliburton the way that he's been playing lately. They've typically gone with Prince.
Tyrese Halliburton. Like,
yeah,
what are you putting Torian Prince on him? Like, good luck with that. You putting
That's
Gary
what they've
Trent
done,
on him?
and it hasn't worked. Yep.
Like, if you try to guard him with either one of the point guards or with Dame, like, good luck with that. Like,
yep.
I don't see a path where the Bucks are really shutting down Indiana's offense. That doesn't seem to exist to me. And if they're not doing that, how are they getting out in transition? Which I think they need to do because they're going to have problems in their half court offense. But Indiana doesn't really chase offensive rebounds either. So even if the Pacers are struggling relative to usual offensively, they're back on defense pretty often.
Mm-hmm.
Not like they're an amazing transition defense team, but they're at least back.
You have the next pick.
I will go with the Knicks and Pistons.
Yep.
So I'm very interested to see how the matchups in this series play out. The Pistons are one of the teams that have generally guarded Karl-Antony Towns with their center.
Yep.
Does that change in this series? Does it change for the Knicks? Are they willing to put Karl-Antony Towns on like Asar Thompson or Tobias Harris so they can switch the Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren pick and rolls? Typically, no, they have not been willing to do that. But also, we haven't really seen the Knicks play with their actual guys in this matchup a lot. Towns sat out, I think, 2 of the games or maybe 1 of the games. Like, I was listening to Fred Katz on his podcast. Like, Jalen Brunson's most common pick and roll partner against the Pistons this season. I'll give you 5 guesses. You won't be able to guess who it was.
McBride. I don't know. I was trying to.
No.
I was trying to name something obscure.
Achua, who is not going to play in this series.
Right.
So that gives you. And the third most common was Ariel Hukporti, who is obviously, like, even if his knee heals, like Fred said, he is not going to come within 50 feet of this series. The Pistons, I think, something that's interesting, are one of the teams that ran their offense at Brunson rather than at Towns. Tim Hardaway Jr. was, I think, Cade's second most common pick and roll partner behind Jalen Duren, ahead of Isaiah Stewart, or maybe third right behind Isaiah Stewart. So that's going to be something interesting to watch out for. Are the Knicks willing to switch that pick and roll, whether it's Hardaway or Beasley when he's on the court? Are they willing to switch that? Or are they going to willfully put themselves into rotation by doing some sort of hedging and recovering? That's going to be interesting to watch. And then it's just, can the Pistons score enough to keep up with presumably what the Knicks can do offensively?
Yep. Here's what bothers me about this series is I think there's so many fascinating things that both of these teams can do matchup wise. Neither team is going to do them because you've got Tom Thibodeau and JB Bickerstaff, the 2 coaches who are the poster people of dance with the one who brought you here. And they're just going to do the thing that they do. And that could end up, instead of being like this fun tactical thing, just be 2 like just stubborn-headed hammers just trying to wail at each other and just figure out who falls first, which could also be really entertaining. I think the physicality in the series is going to be really interesting. I don't think Karl-Antony Towns gets enough credit for how physical he's been on the offensive end this season, even if he leaves you a little wanting on the defensive end, obviously. But they'll play Duren on Cat. I kind of half joke. I do wonder, would they try something different? You know, it's different in the regular season than in a 7-game series. We know what's going to happen, right? Like, Duren is going to be on Cat, and it's not going to work for a couple of games because Cat's Karl-Antony. He's just going to win that matchup. And then what does JB Bickerstaff do if the Pistons are down 0-2? Like, you have to do something at that point. Do you try Tobias Harris?
Right. The question at that point is, do you switch the matchup and have Tobias Harris guard Towns, or does he say, I'm going to try Isaiah Stewart instead? And how much better does that?
And bench Duren and bring in Stewart?
Yeah. I don't think they would go in that direction. Like, to me, just start the series with Jalen Duren guarding Josh Hart. This is what everybody's doing to the Knicks for a reason. The issue there is then you have Tobias Harris guarding Jalen Brunson and a lot of switches, and I don't love that.
So that's why I end up with, would you try Asar Thompson?
That was where I was going to go next. Like, instead of having Asar start on Brunson, have Cade start on Brunson and have Asar on Towns. That could be a direction that you go to.
And Bickerstaff has not wanted to use Cade on Brunson. But look, if the Pistons are going to win this series, Cade Cunningham is going to be the best 2-way player on the floor, right? That just has to happen. So give him a chance. I would love to see Cade come out and take that assignment. That, to me, I think there's going to be a trendy pick of people taking the Pistons over the Knicks. The Pistons have beaten the Knicks 3-1 in the series this regular season. I just think that the playoffs are very different. And I don't really care very much. Like you said, like there was not a lot of Knicks players in this series. I don't care
I
much
would
about
say
that record.
none of the 3 games were
Yeah.
none of the 4 games were really representative. Like the last game, the Knicks didn't play like 4 of their guys or whatever it was. The first game was before the Pistons really started getting going, and in the middle 2 games, I can't remember who it was that sat up, but there were guys sitting out on both sides. I don't know how representative any of those games were of what we're going to see in this series. I do think, like, would you want to see Cade come out and take that Brunson matchup? I think I would, just from the way the Pistons should be doing things standpoint, but he's going to have to do so much offensively. Are they going to be willing to tax him with also you have to guard Jalen Brunson? Is he even going to be able to hold up to that as good as he is? Like, it's really tough to ask him to do all of that on both ends of the court.
And then you get into the foul trouble part of it too, which is the obvious thing with Jalen Brunson drawing the fouls. You can't afford for Cunningham to get in foul trouble. He's your best player. Once he's off the court, you're done, right? You're toast. So the other part of this that I'm interested to see is when Detroit shortens the rotation, who stops getting minutes? Because they tend to go 9 or 10 deep, and you don't necessarily have to do that in the first round, and maybe that's an advantage that you have over the Knicks in this one, is you feel pretty good about your top 10. But if they do shorten the rotation, is there a world where Beasley just ends up starting and Tim Hardaway Jr. is not playing, or he's playing a lot fewer minutes or something? I don't know how much ultimately that's going to matter in this series, but it's just something that I'm watching.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would just depend on which of them is and is not making shots between the two of those guys. Beasley killed the Knicks this year. He hit like 1,000 threes against them. You know, you mentioned the difference in depth. I think the Knicks probably trust 7.5 guys. Like Tibbs is going to trust McBride. He's going to trust Robinson. And he seems like he kind of trusts Shamet at this point. Like I would think that Payne is the first guy to get cut out of the rotation. And then Shamet would be next, depending on whether or not he's making his shots. One thing I'm interested in too, like Detroit, the weakness that team has offensively is turning the ball over. The Knicks over the second half of the season were like second or third or whatever it is in opponent turnover rate. If the Knicks are forcing a bunch of turnovers in addition to what they're probably going to be able to do in half-court offense, it's very difficult for me to see Detroit winning the series. Pistons really have to take care of the ball.
I've got the Knicks in 6, and I'm only going that far in the series just because Jalen Brunson is still sort of finding his rhythm since coming back from injury. But maybe 1 or 2 games fully knock the rust off, and I think we're going from there.
Yeah, I'm sort of torn between Knicks in 5 and Knicks in 7, just because, it's like I think they're going to win the series, and I think it's either going to be they take control of the series from the jump and the Pistons grab a game, or it's like a knockdown, drag out, this is harder than it has to be kind of series. And based on what the Knicks have been this year, I'm sort of leaning toward this is harder than it has to be. But then I also feel like I'm going to look back and be like, why did I take like the young upstart team that can't really score that well to push this Knicks team to 7 games? And I just don't think that it'll be a 6-game series for some reason. I don't know. Knicks in 5, Knicks in 7. I'm not making a decision.
Man, you even talked me to Knicks in 5, but that's fair. All right, we've got one more series. I don't remember whose pick it is, but it's Boston, Orlando. Nobody wants to see this thing go 7 games. I think most people would choose for this just to be over in 4 games. But what's anything interesting to you in this one?
How do the Magic score at all in the half court? Because if that doesn't happen, the series is going to be over in 4 games.
Could be over in 3 games. Yeah, I think, look, of all the teams that Boston could have faced in the first round, this is probably the one that annoys them the most, because you look at some of the stuff that the Magic do really well. They don't give up threes. They don't allow opponents to even make the threes that they do give up, and obviously that's Boston's whole thing. Nobody took more threes in the league. Nobody made more threes in the league than Boston. Nobody gave up fewer threes in the league than Orlando. But at the same time, the Magic also don't take any threes and don't make any threes. So that really, you see that stat kind of put out there a lot, the 3-point allowing. But at the end of the day, if the Magic aren't making even close to whatever the threes are that Boston gets, even if it's 10 fewer threes per game than Boston usually averages, they're still making 10 more threes on average than Orlando's making. So I don't really care about that stat. I care more about, can the Magic get up any threes at all against what looks like healthy Celtics team with Drew Holiday and Derek White and all these guys out on the perimeter, switching everything, flattening them out. I don't see the pathway for Orlando.
Yeah, I also trust Boston to get the threes up anyway. Like, as good as the Magic are defensively and as disciplined as they are about not allowing the threes, like, I trust Boston's offense more than I trust Orlando's defense. And then with the Magic, like, even if they are getting up the threes, like, that offense is so dependent on getting to the free throw line. They were second in the league in free throw rate. The Celtics don't foul. I think they were first in the league in opponents' free throw rate. So, like, if you're not getting to the line and you don't put up any threes, how are you scoring against a defense as good as the Celtics? And I just don't see the path for them.
Yeah, I think the worst thing for this, I have the same note. I have all that 3-point stuff down, and I literally I don't think any of this matters. Like, it just doesn't. Yeah. I think the Celtics in a playoff series, they're going to get to their stuff that they want to get to. There's going to be more urgency. They're going to get the threes that they want to get up. It's going to be fine. The foul thing is a great call. I have Celtics in 5 only because this team feels incapable of sweeping. But
that was going to be my next point. Like, is there a Celtic bullshit game where they just are throwing the ball all over the place and aren't on point in their rotations, and like they shoot 28% from 3 instead of 35% from 3 for a night, like, and they just win it in 5 instead? I'm going to take them in 4. I just don't see a way that even in a game like that the Magic score enough to be able to take a win.
You're probably right, but I need to believe it before I see it with Boston, as I always do, because I guess I'm a hater. But real quick on the other 1-8 series. We're recording this on Thursday. We'll find out what these series actually are. But if it's OKC, Sacramento was eliminated last night by Dallas, so it's either going to be Dallas or Memphis. The Anthony Davis thing in a Mavericks matchup with the Thunder would be kind of interesting. Not interesting enough for me to feel anything about Dallas winning the series, but it would at least be something that the Thunder have to talk about in the meetings.
Though? Nico Harrison has already told us that defense wins championships, and the Thunder have the best defense in the league. So I think we know how that series would go.
That's right. And then if it's Memphis, they just can't defend all of the things that the Thunder have, and I think that's probably a sweep. Then you've got Cleveland versus either Miami or Atlanta. The Atlanta thing, the Cavs have the stuff to just wipe away Atlanta's pick and roll attack. I think they'll just absorb all the space and they'll crowd them. Also, fun little storyline in that series if that's what we get. Karis LeVert and George Niang revenge games, because I kind of think the Hawks kind of won that trade.
I mean, DeAndre Hunter shot like 47% from 3 after the trade, but yeah, I mean, LeVert and Niang played really well once they got to Atlanta. I think the bigger issue for the Hawks would be on the other end of the court. Like, there is no chance that the Hawks are stopping the Cavs from putting up, their 120 whatever offensive rating. Just no chance.
Yeah, every game feels like 120 to 98. Kind of feels like what the final score. If it's Miami, Bam and Hero are confident about that matchup. They beat them once. The 3 games that they played against the Cavs were decided by 16 total points this season. So they're a team that compete with them.
It would certainly be a much more annoying series for the Cavs than a series against Atlanta would. I don't know that it necessarily goes that far, but I could see it being like a 5-game series where like you said, the total differential is like 30 points or something like that.
Exactly. The Cavs just have so many guys that can close them out and close out games, and the Heat just really don't have that player anymore.
Plus, if the Heat get a lead, they're going to blow it. They blow all their leads.
That's true. They're very good at getting leads and not keeping them. Jared Dubin, the last night in basketball. Substack. Remind me of the name of the podcast one more time.
It's Drive and Dish. I would be remiss if I didn't say I did move the newsletter over from Substack to Ghost. So it's no longer on Substack. It's just lastnightinbasketball.com. And you can subscribe there to the newsletter as well.
Okay, good to know. I'll put a new link in the show notes then. Thanks so much for jumping on, and happy playoffs, man.
Thanks for having me, man.